Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
A whole bunch of people sent me this story, widely reported, both the New York Times and elsewhere. She bought her dream home, then a sovereign citizen changed the locks. Sarah Maslanier wrote the story, and the woman at the center of the story started getting official-looking letters in the mail right after she bought her home on Ivy Street in Newark. The letters all carried gold seals and contained legal-sounding language, and the documents said that an obscure 18th century treaty gave the rights to her house to the person who sent her the letter. And so she thought, well, this is a joke or a hoax or something, so she ignored the letters. So she was surprised when she found herself in her yard on a June afternoon recently as a SWAT team negotiated with the man who had broken into her house, changed her locks, and hung a red and green flag from the window. He said he was a sovereign citizen of a country that does not exist and for whom the U.S. laws do not apply. So he said, your laws don't apply to me, and I'm in this house. She was the victim of a ploy known as paper terrorism, which is a favorite tactic of groups that are fast-growing, according to government experts and watchdog organizations. They are loosely basing their actions around a theory that they are foreign citizens bound only by arcane legal systems, and it encourages followers to violate the laws in the name of empowerment. Experts say it lures marginalized people to its ranks with a false promise that they are above the law, and of course that you can get cool stuff like someone else's house for free by just filing some paperwork. This has been around for a while. I've been a lawyer for 30 years. I remember shortly after getting out of law school reading about this, and this has been going on for some time. And the problem, one of the problems, is that most courts have a clerk who accepts things for filing. And you can walk in and hand them something, and they will file it. It's not their job necessarily to vet what you're filing. They just look at it and they file it. And that happens with the courts. It happens with the Register of Deeds. It happens in a bunch of different departments of the government. And so people will actually say, I filed this with the government. I filed it. And the filing of something with the government doesn't make it real. And they call us paper terrorism because there's some people who just realize I can just file all kinds of stuff. And there's stuff that you file that people will be forced to respond to. Otherwise, the stuff's hanging out there. But the man who entered her home was arrested in June and charged with criminal mischief, burglary, criminal trespass, and making terroristic threats. Prosecutors in New Jersey are planning to take that case into front of a grand jury, according to a spokesperson for the Essex County Prosecutor's Office. The strange letters, though, declaring that the woman's home is not her own, are still coming in the mail. She's still getting them. They arrive on a letterhead that claims to be from the consul, using the name Lenapehoking of the Al Moroccan Empire at New Jersey State Republic. And I'm probably mispronouncing some of those, but there's only so much I can do here. Lenapehoking was the land between New York City and Philadelphia that includes New Jersey and was home to an indigenous tribe before it was colonized by European settlers. So the man sending these letters and who moved into the house refer to themselves as Moors, capital M-O-O-R-S, Moors. The Moors claim to be about black liberation, opportunity, and uplifting black people, the homeowner said in an interview, seated on a staircase inside her house. But he is literally oppressing me and taking what's mine as a black woman, which is part of the irony here. This past summer, the Moorish movement exploded into public view after this woman posted viral TikTok accounts of her ordeal. There's been other events with the Moors in the news. Increasingly across the country, sovereign citizens have clashed with the authorities, tied up resources, and frazzled lives in their insistence that laws such as the requirement to pay taxes, follow speed limits, obey traffic laws, or, say, license their pets do not apply to them. People who claim to be more sovereign citizens believe they are bound mainly by maritime law, which is actually quite funny because there's other groups of sovereign citizens who say that the U.S. court system is all maritime law, and that's why they don't need to follow it. But no one said this stuff makes all that much sense. They said they do not have to follow the actual local laws, and this is according to a lawyer and author of a study on the impact of these sovereign citizen groups in an article written for the Emory International Law Review. sovereign citizen ideology first cropped up in America in the 1970s, but it was very, very small movement at the time. This permutation appears to have gained steam in the 1990s, inspired partly by black identity ideology of a similarly named religious group, the Moorish Science Temple of America, which disavows the sovereign citizen movement. Membership in the Moorish sovereign citizen movement has been driven by the internet into the hundreds of thousands. And of course, the internet makes a lot of this stuff spread faster. Rise of the Moors, as well as the individual members arrested in Massachusetts in July, did not respond to requests for comment. Why this man set his sights on this woman's home, no one knows. They don't know each other. According to the woman who lives there, she says they have never met before she found him in her home. And so what happened was she showed up at her house and tried to get in, and the key didn't work. So she then discovered that this man was living in her house, and he had had the locks changed. Now, here's the interesting question. If you're a locksmith, and a guy calls you up and says, hey, I can't get into my house. Can you come and redo all my locks for me? Wouldn't you wonder if perhaps that person has the legal right to do that? So, in documents that the man posted online, he refers to the house, which was built in the 1950s, as his ancestral estate. But according to the county prosecutor's office, there does not appear to be a connection. It was June 16th when she came to inspect her home. She had closed on it in February, was planning renovations before moving in, and she tried to unlock the door, but the locks had been replaced. She returned with a locksmith and was confronted by two men, one of whom was the man who said the house was his. They got in an argument, and she called the police. When the police arrived, and this is, by the way, an interesting thing. I've heard of these stories happening before. The police arrive and go, we don't know who's right. And they walk away from it. So here, the police looked at the documents, both from the homeowner and the man who'd moved in, and after looking at the documents, they said that this is her house, not yours, my friend, and they told the man to get out. The men claimed to be sovereign citizens of the El Moroccan Empire, and their status permitted them access to the property. The officers verified that the woman had bought the house in February and that they asked the men to leave, and they did. And 30 minutes later, the man just came back, walked into the house, and locked himself back in. She then called the police, who sent a SWAT team. And the SWAT team actually managed to get the man out of there. Now, she's still a little shaken, and she's enraged each time another letter arrives in the mail because she's still getting letters saying, that's my house, from somebody else. So, for decades, followers of this movement have remained largely off the radar, cropping up mostly in outlandish-seeming news stories on their paper terrorism tactics. But across the country, they've clogged court dockets with these arguments, filing spurious lawsuits, and burying county clerk offices in flurries of fake deeds, liens, and other documents. Police departments nationwide have begun training officers on how to deal with people who drive without licenses or with fake plates and who claim that the police have no authority over them. And if you want to go down the rabbit hole, you might kiss a couple afternoons of your life goodbye. But you can go on the internet, onto YouTube, and find videos posted by people who gather up these videos of sovereign citizens at the roadside arguing with police officers about whether or not the police have any authority at all. So, when Jordan Feinberg, a real estate agent in Bethesda, Maryland, visited a mansion he was selling for its owner in 2013, he was startled to discover a man inside who introduced himself as the property owner. He had paperwork that referenced the Vienna Convention on Consular Relations and a peace treaty from the 1700s between the Sultan of Morocco and the U.S. Now, that man was arrested and convicted of several crimes relating to home invasion, could not be reached for comment. But the question, of course, is if a house was built in the 20th century, what does a peace treaty from the 1700s have to do with it, especially a peace treaty signed with the Sultan of Morocco when the house is here in America? That real estate agent said it was the most bizarre thing in the world. This was just somebody saying the sky is purple when it's blue. So in the case of the man who broke into the mansion under the Vienna Convention, was in court, and the judge disagreed with the man's worldview and said, under your set of rules, every house is fair game. You own the entire United States. You own the oceans, and you own anything you want. And that's not how a free, orderly society works. It's not how it works. So it's a crazy story. But we hear about this from time to time. We also heard about variations on this during the housing crisis and implosion in 2008 and 2009. There were a lot of people who got ousted from their homes and they were bank owned at the time. And these vacant homes were all across America. And there were several, I remember seeing several stories in the news where somebody would just move into a vacant house and go, hey, I'm just here. The house is vacant. And depends on how long it took the bank to figure out that somebody was using the house. And I remember seeing an article where a guy had done that. After he'd been there for a little while, he went and filed a quitclaim deed. And he got a quitclaim deed, and he quitclaimed the house to himself. And I remember the news actually doing stories on this. And they said, this is brilliant. This guy did this. He filed a quitclaim deed, and now the house is his. And the news organizations kept reporting it as if that piece of paper did that. And he was showing them, look, they accepted it for filing. I filed this. I filed a quitclaim deed. And a quitclaim deed, and I'm going to really, really simplify this, is that if I might have an interest in property, or I do have an interest in property, or you think I do, but I don't think I do, I can quitclaim where I say I no longer have any claims to this property. And I can quitclaim what rights I may have had or may not have had, but whatever rights possible, I can quitclaim those to somebody else. And that's often how you quiet title. So let's suppose you're buying a piece of property. Everyone wants to sell it to you. And there's two people over here we know for a fact own it. And there's another relative who may have an interest in it because of the way that, wills and estates work. We don't know. And they don't care. They don't care. But you want to clean this up. So you ask them, will you quitclaim any interest you may have had in the property to me when I buy the property from these people? Happens all the time. Happens all the time. But a quitclaim is where you give up rights in something. And when you give up those rights and you give them to somebody else, the only thing they're getting is what you had in the first place. So if you don't own something and you quitclaim that to somebody else, they don't own it too. And the idea that you can go into the court clerk's office and quitclaim something to yourself literally makes no sense. Because you're saying, I don't have any rights in this anymore, and I'm giving those rights to myself. It's kind of like a perpetual motion machine, except it works even less in real life. So that's the crazy story. She bought her dream home, then a sovereign citizen changed the locks. Good news, the police showed up and got him out. The man's been charged with a raft of crimes. We'll see what happens after the grand jury convenes. But it was sent to me by Kevin, Richard, Jenna, Sue, and Caleb. Thanks a lot, my friends. New York Times and others ran it. Sarah Maslinier wrote it, and it's a bizarre story, but we hear about that from time to time. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law.
Honey, tact is for people who aren't witty enough to be sarcastic.